I don't really do horror, but I am about to. You put Tony from Skins in Nosferatu. The opening scene. Okay, so I have a confession to make, and it's that I'm a bit of a scaredy cat. In the way that, like, I don't watch horror movies, because to me, horror is a genre that's about fear and, like, conjuring fear, and that's the whole point. I don't like that. I do like spooky, but I also don't like spooky kitschy. I like spooky camp. I love Rocky Horror Picture Show. I did watch The Witch by Robert Eggers in theaters, which was a choice. I'm really glad I saw it. I think the themes of light and like living in less light and how that affected that family and what that meant psychologically has always stuck with me. Like the simplicity of the costumes and how beautiful it was. So watching Nosferatu is like an ode to him because of how incredible he is as a director, and also because of the aesthetic. Because I can tell that the aesthetic is going to be maybe a step up in terms of like luxness to The Witch, but I don't do well with horror because it just gets to me. When I was a kid, my mom wouldn't let me watch horror movies because she said that like stuff like that happens to real people, which is horrifying for a child to know. It has a big impact on why horror is really difficult for me. I feel like if I'm watching a film, there's a couple of reasons why I watch a film, and none of it is to be scared out of my mind. I don't understand that. I think those people should be studied. If you're a horror fan, explain it to me. I'm fascinated. I do have a thing with vampires though. I've always really loved vampires and the lore around vampires and the vampire aesthetic, or like the aesthetic that's been created around vampires, because they've been around since antiquity, and so the costuming and the settings and things like that tend to be in eras that I really appreciate the fashion and the architecture and all those kinds of things. So that's another reason why I want to watch this movie. I think Lily Rose Depp is a really interesting choice. I feel like her face is very perfect for this role. Some of the other actors I'm a little bit questionable about. Like, why'd you put Tony from Skins in Nosferatu? That was a weird casting choice. Obviously, just because he was in that show doesn't like tarnish his whole career, or he's not like a one-note actor, but just in general. I think he was also in The Favorite, which was strange, but good. And that's the other thing, I watch a lot of period films. Period films are probably my favorite genre of film. So I'm seeing this movie because of the aesthetics, because what I get to wear going to the theater. I'm seeing this movie because I want to see what Robert Eggers does with the story. I'm seeing this movie because of the aesthetic. Did I already say that? So we're saying it twice. I'm seeing this movie so I can get a coffin tin popcorn bucket because they're sold out online. I'm seeing this movie because I want to challenge myself in watching horror and being able to handle it, because I've done a lot of work on myself somatically to be able to handle anything. So I know I'll be able to handle it. It's just like the enjoyment aspect is what it's questionable. I rewatched Midsummer. See, I'm not finishing this list. I rewatched Midsummer on Midsummer, or like on spring equinox this year, and that wasn't as bad as I thought, and I did really enjoy it again. I think it's just such a beautiful movie. If it could be beautiful, then I'll watch it, basically. Anyways, I don't really do horror, but I am about to. I just got back from Nosferatu. I got the popcorn bucket. I'm really excited to debrief. I'll probably do that another day because it's really late at night. I got to do the 9-10 p.m. showing, so it's probably like midnight on Christmas Eve. But yeah, this is actually pretty good quality as well, which I'll look at more. I saw Nosferatu. Anyway, I went and saw why does this kind of smells like hot chocolate. There's also blood on the inside of the. Do you see that? There's blood on the inside of the coffin, which kind of makes me sick. But anyways, I went and saw Nosferatu, and I'm sure up until now you've seen footage of me before where I was really scared that it was gonna be like a horror movie, because I hate horror movies, like traditional horror movies where it's just jump scares and blood and whatever. But I've only seen 2 horror movies in the movie theater. I've seen Midsummer and I've seen The Witch by Robert Eggers. And both of them I've seen since, and I really loved. The only other horror movies I've seen are when I've been with groups of people who all want to watch the horror movie, and I kind of have to just go along with it, but I am looking at the person next to me the whole time, which I did do a couple times during Nosferatu because there were still jump scares. I also saw it in like a Dolby theater. I really highly suggest seeing it in a Dolby theater. I don't know what they call it, but basically like the whole theater was like rattling and shaking at some points. It was like my chair was moving around, but it was like at some points there was like, it was more in the room, like there was a lot of effects that were in the room, which was incredible. So definitely feel like we chose the right theater, we chose the right seats. We were like 1 row down from the very back, which is always where I sit, and it was horrifying having to sit through all the previews. That was the worst part because it was amping me up to think that this was going to be a real horror movie, or like not a real horror movie, but that it was going to be a classic like Hollywood horror movie with all the jump scares and stuff, because that's what all the previews were. All the previews were those kinds of movies that are coming out soon. I was like, oh god, like I can't sit through that. And I literally turned to the person sitting next to me and I was like, if it's like this, I will leave. In the middle of the movie. The opening scene of Nosferatu is, I was like, oh cool, this is a masterpiece already. Like Oscar worthy already, the opening scene. And I have to tell you, like, being in the Dolby theater, the way that the theater shook with that opening scene was everything and more. Okay, I was like, I'm a bit spooked, but I'm not scared. And I immediately like felt this level of like comfort and shift in the room, and it really made me appreciate what they did with this movie, because it is, if you look up like the genre on Google, it's horror / drama. And I didn't know that until afterwards. I thought it was just supposedly straight up horror, and it really felt like that. It really felt like a horror drama. Like it felt like the horror was to enhance the story, and it had some classic jump scares to appease horror fans, but it wasn't the main theme. And I really appreciate that as a person who's not a fan of horror, and a huge, that was me kicking the popcorn bucket, and a huge fan of goth aesthetics, gothic literature, and like a dark macabre vibe. I'm a very macabre person. I'm not a horror person. And it was really obvious immediately that that was going to be what this movie was, like the vibe of it. So I immediately felt more at ease. I don't want to give spoilers, and I've never done a movie review on camera, so I'm trying to figure out how to say some things, but okay, costuming, 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. It also was that this movie focused more on, so I've read Dracula, I've seen 2 versions of Dracula, and then I've read and watched, obviously, like, spin-off vampire things. So I'm very well-versed. I know the Dracula story by heart at this point, and I didn't know that Nosferatu was I didn't do any research on this film because I just wanted to be surprised. I didn't know until literally, 20 seconds into the movie that this was basically a Dracula retelling, and I could tell just from, like, oh, these 3 characters, okay, cool. Even though the names are changed and everything, but there's not been a Dracula telling where they really focus on who's traditionally seen as Mina in Dracula, like Bram Stoker's Dracula, the main woman. She's never been focused on. She's sort of like a victim. like a side character victim. And in this film, she's a central character, and her costumes speak to that because her costumes are so beautiful and so stylish, and they're like, it's like an afterthought because they're so beautiful, and you're like, oh my god, like there were multiple times where I was like, I'm gonna be sick. This dress is so incredible. And yet it was like being dirtied, or it was like she was, trudging through the street, or she was doing something else. Like the fact that the costumes were so incredible, but that they were sort of like a secondary to the rest of the production was, I think, really incredible and uh just beautiful. And it's funny because since I've gotten home from seeing the movie, because today is, I don't know, the 28th, so it's been 4 days since I've seen the movie. I saw it on Christmas Eve. There's been so much criticism about this movie. And I was like, oh, like maybe I really glorified it because like I said, the first opening scene I was in, and then I just kept getting more in. And then there were some scenes that I was like, this is kind of funny. Like it doesn't really have like the seriousness or the gravitas that maybe it should. But other than that, I was like, I walked out of the theater feeling like it was literally a 10 out of 10. A 10 out of 10 movie for me. That's really hard. Like for example, Poor Things I thought was really gorgeous. Again, the costuming, the set, the cinematography, the acting, like everything. I love those actors, everything. And I still think I said it was like 8.5 because there were some things about it that I thought were pandering to a larger audience when it was meant to be strange. So to say that Nosferatu was a 10 out of 10, it being a horror movie, it being something that could easily be overrated, all these kinds of things, I felt like really confident in that. And honestly, I have thought about that movie every day these past 4 days since seeing it. And when I saw this criticism, I was like, oh, maybe I'm glorifying it too much. Like, I'm a pretty harsh critic, but okay, like, yeah, maybe I'm glorifying it too much. But now sitting down and thinking about it again, I didn't. Like, it was so beautiful and gross in some parts. It was so different it had its own flavor, and just added its own commentary on the story, the Dracula story. Bill Skarsgård knocked it out of the park with everything. I think I love the way that they did the vampire in this movie. I love that he was more inhuman. You usually see in these stories, like they want to, the sort of like sexuality is really high in terms of their actual physical appearance, and that was not the case in this movie, and I thought that was really smart. I thought also downplaying the husband of the friend was really important. And oh my god, I don't want to spoil it, but there's a scene, actually I'll put in the description the timestamp because I have to say this. So skip to the time down below if you don't want to hear a spoiler. But the scene where the husband of her friend, she's died. His wife has died. He goes to the mausoleum, or he goes to like her grave basically. And you can tell he has the plague. It's on his face. But he goes to her body and he takes her corpse, and he's like, I can't remember the exact words he says, but they're iconic. It's an incredible scene. And he basically kisses his wife's corpse until he dies, kind of, and it's not romantic. It's like, it's gross because her body is dead and lifeless, and like he's squeezing it and he's gross, and like it's just a terrible time. And then he's sort of like halfway in the coffin. Like, it's not beautiful. And I thought that scene really, to me, was what sealed the deal on that movie. And I had those moments over and over and over again. So I really, really, really love this movie. I feel really connected to it, as far as like, I feel a lot of it is just actually feeling proud that I could get through it as a horror movie, with how spooked I get and how deeply things affect me. So yeah, it was just an incredible time. I had a really good time watching it. I remember being like, oh, I could live in this universe forever. Um, I thought Lily Rose Depp, there were some scenes where I was like, is this an effect or is she actually doing this with her body? Because yeah, the like contortion that she does is immaculate, and it looks real, and it makes you feel uncomfortable without it being like bloody, disgusting horror, which is really, it's just really elegant in that way. Like I said, there are some scenes that I feel like, or moments that feel like it might cheapen it, or it might seem a little bit more on the side of like funny, or just, yeah, come off as a little bit less serious. But yeah, I think overall, I feel like it's very beloved to me, that film. And I'm so glad that I'm getting a chance to sit down and talk about it with you, because again, I was like, okay, I'm willing to hear other people's criticisms of art, obviously, always, and I feel fine with things not being as good as I thought they were, or I'm fine with things, with my opinion changing, but sitting down and really remembering it and thinking about it, like, it was so incredible and beautiful, and I'm really excited to watch it again, not in a giant screen, like, so where I can really watch it, because some of the jumps are like some of the moments where you're like, oh, something nasty gonna happen or pop out, or there's just like tension building moments where you can't really get away from them when you're in the theater. It pulls you out of the story, or it pulls you out of the moment, so there are certain things that I didn't get to see as closely. So I'm excited to watch again. I'm excited to watch it again. I don't know if I'll watch it again in theaters. I don't know how long it's going to be out. I have to check. But I might see it again in theaters, but I definitely watch it again at home. I'll probably buy the DVD. I like having the physical DVD cases and copies. I have that for some other of my favorite movies. So yeah, I really loved it, and I don't like, the thing is that I don't recommend it. Like, I don't recommend it for everyone. I think if you really love like aesthetic, goth aesthetic, if you really love costuming, if you really love like grotesque beauty, if you really love great acting, if you love gross stuff, then you should see it. If you know the Dracula story, you should see it, and you should tell me what you think, because I don't know how many people out there are as familiar with it as I am. I'm not like, I don't know by the back of like the back of my hand, but at this point I'm confident, because I knew, as like I said, like 20 seconds in, I was like, oh, okay, I know this story, so I know it pretty well. So if you also know the Dracula story really well, and you are and you see it, I'd love to know your thoughts on Robert's take on this. And also, people are now like, oh, I want to see Robert Eggers do this and this and that, and I'm really excited to go and back and watch. I think the only movie I haven't seen from him, maybe there's two more. I haven't seen The Lighthouse, which is him, and also Willem Dafoe is in that one as well, and I love Willem Dafoe. And I love Robert Eggers. I hadn't seen them together before Nosferatu, so I'm excited to see that. I'm really enjoying these pairings. Yorgos something, who did Poor Things. He also did like a couple of other films, like all with the same cast. I really love that. I really love that kind of iterative series style of art. So it's so funny, because I'm trying to end the video. I don't know why I'm trying to end the video. I just don't want to take up too much time, which is weird, because I'll be editing it, so it'll be half the time. But I want to keep talking about it. Like, I just really love it. I also want to say, like, so there's so much merch that's been created around this movie, and I am not sure how I feel about that yet, which is the most surprising thing, because I have gotten more into being okay with having physical objects, which is so funny, because everyone's like, this always happens to me, but people are on like the opposite end of, what's trending right now is like de-influencing, decluttering, minimalism, all that kind of stuff. That's how I always have been, and I've now, in the past year or two, been transitioning back into being okay with having objects. I mean, I've always been that way. I've always been more minimalist. Like, I have I'm like a movie character. I wear the same outfit every day. I wear the same, like these pants, I wear them pretty much every day. And so branching out in the amount of clothes I have, branching out in the amount of objects I have, branching out in the amount of books I have, and it's very uncomfortable, but I'm doing it. And so the Nosferatu merch and stuff, like, I was interested in, because if I really love something, I want to have more of that thing. And so I have the popcorn bucket, which I'm very happy with. Mostly because I got it at a better price than I thought. I wouldn't have paid more. Like, I think I paid with tax like $30 or something. I wouldn't pay any more than that. I think they're online for like 40 or 50. But there's merch from like one of my favorite stationery companies, Open Sea Design Co. They have a huge series of merch with the movie, and then they did like pretty good merch. Just like the Focus Features did pretty good merch in general, but I'm just not feeling called to buy it, which is really interesting. So yeah, I want to keep talking about it because I want to stay in that universe, and I feel sad that this video is over. But I'm really happy that I cataloged it, and I've also been feeling like, oh, everyone's doing videos about Nosferatu right now. Everyone is doing movie reviews. Like, it's just going to be part of the sea of noise, but I'm feeling in this moment really happy that I did this for myself, because the process was just as like kind of roller coastery as I thought it would be for me. So yeah, thanks for watching. If you decide to see the movie, I'd love to know your thoughts. Bye.